Fighting in East Ukraine has subsided but not stopped since a ceasefire came into effect, the warring parties say. Spokesmen for both the government and the pro-Russian rebels said some shelling had continued, mainly around the besieged town of Debaltseve. But both sides say the truce that came into effect at midnight, 2200 hours o'clock GMT Saturday, is largely holding. Fierce battles raged near the Debaltseve, a key transport hub, in the hours leading up to the truce. Analysts point out that previous truces initially appeared to be holding but eventually failed, and say the next 48 hours are critical. Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko, Russian President Vladimir Putin, French President Francois Hollande and German Chancellor Angela Merkel brokered the agreement on Thursday after lengthy talks in the Belarusian capital Minsk. President Poroshenko has warned that Ukraine will not turn the other cheek if the deal is violated. In a televised address at the time the ceasefire took hold, he said Ukrainian troops in Debaltseve had been resupplied with ammunition. Two rebels' commanders, meanwhile, have been quoted as saying they are entitled to open fire in Debaltseve, with one reportedly saying it was their territory and the ceasefire only applied to the front line. The U.S., which has warned it could begin supplying arms to Ukraine if the peace initiative failed, claimed on Saturday it had evidence that the Russian military had deployed weaponry around Debaltseve, contrary to Moscow denials that it is playing any direct role in the conflict. Officials say more than 5,400 people have been killed since the conflict erupted in eastern Ukraine in April, but the UN believes the actual death toll to be much higher. Last chance. On Sunday morning, Ukraine military spokesman Vladislav Seleznyov said the truce was being observed in general. Shelling by rebels has been not regular and has been localized, he said, according to Reuters news agency. Another spokesman, Anatoly Stelmach, said there had been some 10 incidents of shelling since the truce took hold, mainly around Debaltseve. He said Ukrainian forces had repelled a few attacks in Cherokine, near the strategic southern port city of Mariupol. He claimed hundreds of terrorists had been killed in the previous 2 days. A rebel spokesman concurred that the truce was largely holding for the time being. The ceasefire is largely observed, but the enemy artillery is shelling our positions near Debaltseve, and the rebel-held town of Volodyrsk. Eduard Basurin, spokesman for the Defense Ministry of the self-proclaimed Donetsk People's Republic, DPR, told Russian news agency Interfax. Reports from the main rebel stronghold of Donetsk said the city had suddenly fallen silent, allowing residents in the city some precious respite from artillery bombardment. But few residents expressed confidence that the truce would hold for longer than a few days. According to the Minsk agreement, cessation of hostilities is only the first step and should be followed by the creation of 2 demilitarized buffer zones between 50 to 140 kilometers, 30 to 85 miles, wide, beginning on Monday. In his TV address, Mr. Poroshenko expressed hopes that perhaps the last chance for peace won't be lost, adding that agreements must be honored, and we are expecting that the ceasefire deal will be adhered to. The president said there was still alarm over the situation around Debaltseve, where several thousand Ukrainian troops have been besieged by the separatists for days. The rebels say they have completely cut off supply routes to Debaltseve, encircling the town. Ukraine denies the claim. European leaders have warned Russia that it could face additional sanctions if the 13-point ceasefire agreement is not respected.